All right. Hi, everybody. So, welcome to, I think, session 13 of Mahamudra for the People. And I'm super happy to be here with you. And I'm wishing everybody here a happy Friday. Um, yeah. So, I was thinking, as we've done, the past several sessions prior, maybe we can. Turning all my devices off. We can do a little meditation. What's this? And yeah, so try and as we gather here together, let me check the time. Okay. As everybody kind of trickles in, maybe we can settle into practice. So as we do this, take a little time to relax your body, allow yourself to be comfortable, allow yourself to stabilize into this present moment. And rely on whatever instruction that you've been using up to now, whether it be using breath as an anchor or an external object as an anchor or visualized anchor or mind itself as the anchor. Allow yourself to come into the experience of the present moment. And try and rest into this experience without any regard or obsessive clinging to the past, any expectation about the future, or any particular ideas about what this moment should be like. And we'll sit this way for about 10 minutes. And slowly bring yourself back to the space. Okay. So, once again, thank you for being here. Trying to determine okay, so I want to see if anybody has any questions based on, well, I mean, really anything, or anything that we touched on in the last session. If there's anything that's been alive for you or sparky, and if you don't, that's fine. I was thinking, like, give some people a little time to see if there are any questions, and then. So I've got a couple of things I'd like to share as I've been doing. Oh, there's a question. The question is, what is Justin doing? So Payne writes, distinguishing mind and phenomenon. How to. Been in my lunch jumper reading the last 2 days and need clarification. So, what's the difference between mind and phenomenon? There is not necessarily a tremendous difference between mind and phenomenon in the sense that they basically arise at the same time. The experience of phenomenon, whether it's visual phenomenon, everything that we see right before us, in the room where we are, or all sorts of other phenomenon related to the senses, arises directly in relationship to awareness and mind. So when we say that everything is mind, what we're not saying that is that visual consciousness is all hallucinatory, but that there's no way of removing everything's existence from the experience of mind and awareness. Right? So in this way, there's no separation. And when we begin to look at it in this particular way, we also begin to understand that we're blessed with the opportunity for every single thing, whether or not, I was just looking at a lamp, like looking at this lamp that a friend made for us is practice. And just resting into direct relationship and experience with the lamp is this union of consciousness, mind, experience, and phenomena existing all at the same time. Next to that is a turntable and some plants and some pictures. All of that is the simultaneous experience of visual phenomena and mind. And when we're able to just acknowledge these things as the union of phenomenon and mind, for lack of a better term, there's nothing to hate on, right? There's just letting things be, letting things happen. When we're really able to understand that, then we end up having this opportunity to cut through habits of attachment, aversion, and ignorance in relationship to the way things arise. And so things are just happening. Of course, we can, get all discursive and think, oh, does it really make sense for that lamp to be there? Or, maybe I should dust it, or like any other thing. Or I don't like that lamp. That's, that lamp is ugly. Or I really like that lamp. That lamp is awesome, and I hope nobody takes it from me. Or, whatever. When we begin to get discursive, we're not letting that thing happen authentically. We're not letting the lamp just naturally rise in this unique, special, very, never to be repeated experience of phenomena and mind arising at the same time. Right? And so actually, I don't have the text in front of me right now, but in modern Tantric Buddhism, there's a song that a friend of mine translated by Padampa Sangye, in which he makes reference to bringing illness and death onto the path and allowing both illness and death to be experienced as a treasury of bliss. And of course, when one begins the active dying phase and is actually dying, if we're able to actually let the phenomenon of that experience and awareness happen at the same time, that too becomes this immensely rich place to practice Mahamudra. So it's the same with illness, with COVID, or it's the same with, the intensity of all of the emotion around George Floyd's murder. Everything that arises, right? So emotional experience, or the visual, like if you go to YouTube and pull up a video and just allow that to play and to practice with the merging of phenomena and mind and bringing practice to that moment. This is one of the ways in which Mahamudra is an exceptionally strong and powerful practice for severing the root of suffering, severing the root of our attachments and our aversion and our ignorance around the way things arise and happen. I've been doing a lot of mantra recitations. Lately, it's been bleeding into my Mahamudra practice. Can one make the mantra the anchor, or should the mantra be noticed, accepted, and just let go of like a thought would be? No, the mantra and or the visualization, if you're doing deity practice, both can become anchors for Mahamudra. So let's say we're doing. Let's say we're doing Vajrasattva. I'm sorry. Let's say we're doing Chinmezi, right? So we visualize ourselves in the form of Chinmezi. Chinmezi is white in color, has 4 arms, sitting in lotus position, has a deer skin around his midsection, little Amitabha at the crown of his head. And as we recite Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, there's a disc of light that symbolizes that mantra that's rotating in our heart. A little lotus blossom on our heart, that disc, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, spins around, spins and spins and spins. So that also is a way of anchoring the mind. So you can anchor the mind with mantra, you can anchor the mind with visualization, you can anchor the mind with just sound. Where I live is very good for that because there's a lot of sound. The cars going by. And we can get really subtle in terms of trying to stretch out what we are actually hearing, right? Sometimes we just, our relationship to these things is very immediate, and just kind of tethered to the immediate location of where we are. But as we begin to settle, the awareness of sound stretches out, and we're able to become aware of many more fine sounds. So, and in fact, also within the context of formal deity yoga instruction, it's commonly taught that the arising is the deity in practice. So the visualization of oneself as a deity, or the deity directly in front of us, the mantra recitation, any kind of internal thing that's happening with the mantra are all suitable forms of shamatha, or shamatha-like focus. And then at the end of the sadhana, and in the middle, you can kind of let yourself kind of stretch out into the experience of the deity, which is not localized to any one particular location. Right? So Chenrezi is as vast as the universe. Chenrezi is as small as a mustard seed. And we can practice with vacillating between large and small, and large and small, and large and small. So hopefully that's helpful. Payne writes, thank you, helpful but hard to say how. They're so close. But can't say they're the same. Words really mess up. Yeah, they're not the same. And this becomes a little controversial too, in the sense that, we're not saying that mind is a thing that is separate from everything else. And yet, at the same time, everything arises within the context and experience and kind of direct relationship of mind. So the question becomes, what are we going to focus on? Are we focusing on the words, or are we focusing on the practice? And sometimes focusing on the practice allows us to find the words, rather than, like a debate on philosophy, which is not what I'm saying you're doing. Yeah. So I have a song. Actually, this is a helpful song. So this is a song sung by Milarepa to Gempopa. And we'll see how this feels. So again, just like we've been doing the past several weeks, allow yourself to just sit comfortably. Don't worry about what's going on. And as I say these words and the sound hits your ear, allow whatever happens as a result of that sound hitting your ear to just happen. And you don't need to focus so much on what is happening, and whether this is good or bad or whatever. So this is called A Song of Instruction to Gempopa. It's ostensibly Milarepa sang this song to one of his heart sons, Gempopa. Son, when simplicity dawns in the mind, do not follow after conventional terms. There's a danger you'll get trapped in the eight worldly dharma's chains. Rest in a state full of pride, free of pride. Do you understand this? Teacher from Central Tibet, do you understand this, Takpa Laje? When self-liberation dawns from within, do not engage in the reasonings of logic. There's a danger you'll just waste your energy. Son, rest free of thoughts. Do you understand this, teacher from Central Tibet? Do you understand this, Takpa Laje? When you realize your own mind is emptiness, do not engage in the reasoning beyond one or many. There's a danger you'll fall into a nihilistic emptiness. Do you understand this, teacher from Central Tibet? Do you understand this, Takpa Laje? When immersed in Mahamudra meditation, do not exert yourself in virtuous actions of body and speech. There's a danger the wisdom of non-thought will disappear. Son, rest uncontrived and loose. Do you understand this, teacher from Central Tibet? Do you understand this, Takpa Laje? When the signs foretold by the scriptures arise, do not boast with joy or cling to them. There's a danger you'll get the prophecy of the Mars instead. Rest free of clinging. Do you understand this, teacher from Central Tibet? Do you understand this, Takpa Laje? When you gain resolution regarding your mind, do not yearn for the higher cognitive powers. There's a danger you'll be carried away by the Mara of pretentiousness. Son, rest free from hope and fear. Do you understand this, teacher from Central Tibet? Do you understand this, Takpa Laje? So, when the simplicity of mind, or when simplicity dawns in the experience of mind, do not follow after conventional terms. You know, I think this line is really great because it points out how we sometimes really feel the need to describe or contextualize. And again, this gets back to Lopa's point about not analyzing. We want to be able to, classify this experience. Where does this fit in relationship to, whatever? Mahamudra, perfection of wisdom, the larger kind of, tenets of Madhyamaka. But the danger, Milarepa points out, is that we'll get trapped in the worldly dharmas if we do this. So we should rest in a state free of pride, the pride of analysis. Pride, especially if things are going well. Our practice is clear, experience is vast, free and loose. And we might say, I've got it a little bit. This is one of these ways that we kind of fall into this place of pridefulness. When self-liberation dawns from within, do not engage in the reasonings of logic. There's a danger you'll just waste your energy. Rest free of thoughts. The hardest thing about Mahamudra is just practicing it without getting all weird and making a big deal out of everything. So anyway, I definitely don't want that to appear to be, I think the timing of this is good because I had selected this before everybody had asked their questions. And so I think that's a beautiful alignment of pain, especially around your question. Yeah. and even to some extent to Jared's question. So I want to kind of come back to Jared's other question. Thank you. My reason for asking this is probably due to my fixation on details. I get that way too. My question was because in deity practice, I thought mantra was exclusive to creation stage and Mahamudra completion. Is that literal? So, I mean, broadly speaking, yes. However, it's important to remember that, like Mahamudra is like glasses, right? Anything, especially if I'm doing something, I can kind of half see everything. So I can half see, creation and completion. But when I put, the glasses of Mahamudra on, you can apply Mahamudra to everything, to mantra recitation. You can apply Mahamudra to Tonglen. You can apply Mahamudra to, obviously, Shamatha, Mahamudra to Cha, Mahamudra to deity yoga, Mahamudra to Guru yoga. In fact, Guru yoga is entirely about Mahamudra. Right? It's entirely about receiving all the blessings from, whichever Guru yoga we're practicing. And in so doing that, allowing those blessings to be the thing that kind of pushes us over into the experience of nature of mind. The Mahamudra part of mantra recitation is, where is mantra? What is mantra? Mantra is not just this finite thing, as we tell or finger a mala. Mantra recitation immediately brings us back to the mind of the deity. And the mind of the deity is inherently Mahamudra, right? Open, vast, expansive, beyond time, full of qualities. So these classifications of, mantra recitation being rooted in generation stage and then Mahamudra being, particularly associated with completion stage are broadly speaking, and again, this gets back to those words thing, and how terrible words can be. Do not engage in reasonings of logic. There's a danger you'll just waste your energy. Rest free of thoughts. Do not follow after conventional terms. There's a danger you'll get trapped in the eight-worldly dharmas. Rest free of pride. When you realize your own mind is emptiness, do not engage in the reasoning beyond one or many. So this is phenomenon and mind. What are they? And so it's helpful if we can let. I was actually just telling someone earlier today that for me, I really like to study about what I practice because it allows me to better understand the practice in a much larger sense. And yet one has to be really careful to not let that take over. And so then we find ourselves practicing really inauthentically, kind of mentally reciting what we read, and or having that affect the way we conceive of practice. And so we want to be able to begin to get familiar with the tradition, but then not hold on to, well, this is creation stage and that's completion stage. Because there are some people who, practice completion stage in everything they do. And completion stage in their prostrations, completion stage in mantra recitation, completion stage in Cha. And then there are people who think they're practicing Dzogchen and Mahamudra, and they're practicing generation stage because it's all, a little bit artificial and, arises that way. Javi writes, I find that as I continue to settle into meditation practice, I find that things that irritate me, big and small, are amplified. I like to appreciate seeing my reactivity to things, but I feel if I don't respond and assert my boundaries, I'll explode. Can the activity of Mahamudra be telling someone to screw off? Yeah. I mean, so two things really. Like, I think the noticing of the way that things irritate you. Things may have been irritating you in the past, but you didn't allow yourself to experience it or recognize it. Right? So the process of being able to really kind of recognize, whoa, man, this person's pissed me off, or this situation is really irritating me, or you can find yourself in a situation and you're like, this is insane. This particular situation is crazy. I don't like this, blah, 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 right? So that's fine, right? Feeling that is fine. And then what? And what happens after that? And there are a couple of things. I mean, on a very personal level, especially if we're not, if we're new to the recognition that these dynamics have been arising, kind of, on a low level and hadn't recognized that, the recognition is a very beneficial thing. The subsequent reaction is something that we then also need to take responsibility for, not in a karma way, although that is kind of part of it, but in the Mahamudra way, right? So the Mahamudra aspect of this whole kind of dynamic that you're describing is that you're beginning to recognize the things that irritate you because they feel amplified, and they're amplified likely because you're actually being able to see them. And so right as you experience, and it's an authentic experience, you begin to react. The Mahamudra kind of taking responsibility of the reaction is then to be able to sit and rest in and acknowledge the reaction. So the reaction could be screw off to somebody. Get out of here. Fuck you. Right? Okay. And then what's next? Resting in that. What happens after that? Because screw off doesn't become permanent, right? That's not a permanent state. Unless you're like, oh, screw off, screw off, screw off, screw off. No. Fuck off. And you get stuck there. But chances are you're not. And so the reactivity can be a healthy thing as like a mid-step. But again, you're not really necessarily, you want to be able to allow yourself to liberate what arises as it does. And so we feel irritated, we feel anxious, we feel all the things we feel. We can rest in that. And then what we do next is really up to us. But whatever we do next, we have to blend in with practice. And so the dharma of saying screw off is not necessarily a bad dharma, but its efficacy and power is rooted in our ability to then step into that space with the same Mahamudra and aspiration that we did in the initial kind of spark of the situation. Does that make sense? The question disappeared. Maybe it did. Or maybe Javi got enlightened. Oh. The question came back. So Javi, let me know if that, how that sounds. Everything, when they say everything is mind, every possible reaction is mind. Screw off, fuck off, or just sitting and observing. Oh boy, this person or the situation is rubbing me raw. I feel like I'm on the edges of my limits. And then what? And again, a really, really important thing to remember is that, yeah, we're going to react. We're going to freak out and lose our shit sometimes. And that's okay too. We just come back to practice. Right? And so just as much as we might lose our shit, and it feels very good and important to lay out some boundaries, right? If all of a sudden you recognize that, oh my God, I actually kind of have been pushing this away. I find this person very overbearing, right? And boorish. And I just need to say, man, you know what? Just chill out. Or screw off. That we're moving into, practice in that space. Yeah. I want to have a little fun now because it's Friday. It's Mahamudra Friday. And I want to share a little bit of the song that's in this book, Tantric Treasures by Roger Jackson, which I particularly enjoy. 3 collections of mystical verse from Buddhist India. And that's Saraha right there. He's the kind of regarded as one of the kind of founders of Mahamudra, the Mahamudra lineage as we know it. So this is a little funny, and it captures some of these problems we experience about being good and practicing Mahamudra in a faith tradition, because there's part of us that wants to be good and does silly things in relationship to how the mind really arises. So I shared some of this during our Kumbh Mela thing, but I think it was really late at night. It may have been around 3 a.m. So I know a couple people here were there, but I know a lot were not. So again, just close your eyes and listen to these sounds. Bah. Brahmins, they don't know what's what. In vain, they incant their 4 Vedas. They incant holding earth and water and kusha grass and sit at home making offerings to fire. Their oblations are pointless. The acrid smoke just stings their eyes. With staff or trident, dressed like lords, they pose as sages, imparting ascetic advice. They're fakes. Their error deceives the world. They don't know right any more than wrong. These saints smear their bodies with ashes and wear their matted locks piled on their heads. Seated at home, he lights a lamp. Seated in a corner, he dings a bell. Fixing his gaze, bound in a posture, he whispers into the ears of rich folk. For widows and nuns in their special garb, he grants consecration for a fee. The long-nailed yogin looks filthy, goes naked, pulls out his hair by the roots. Jains mock the path by the way they look. They deceive themselves in teaching freedom. If going naked means release, then the dog and the jackal must have it. If baldness is perfection, then a young girl's bottom must have it. If flashing a tail means freedom, then the peacock and yak must have it. If leftover food turns to wisdom, then the elephant and the horse must have it. Saraha says, "It seems to me for Jains there's no freedom. The body deprived of the real only gains isolation." Self-promoted novices and monks and elders, these dress-up friars and ascetics. Some sit writing commentaries on the sutras. Others seek to dry up the intellect. Others run around in the great way, where scripture turns to sophistry and wordplay. Some contemplate the mandala circle. Others describe the fourth seal as real. Some think in the realm of space. Some think it's in the realm of space. Others connect it with emptiness. Mostly they all dwell in contradiction. You may give up the innate and fancy nirvana, but not an ounce of the ultimate you will gain. If you're not satisfied in your practice, how will meditation get you free? What use are lamps? What use is offered food? What is mantra practice supposed to do? What use is pilgrimage or forest penance? Will you reach freedom immersed in water? Rejecting compassion, stuck in emptiness, you will not gain the utmost path. Nurturing compassion all by itself, you're stuck in rebirth and will not win freedom. But if you're able to join emptiness and compassion, you won't remain in existence or in nirvana. Hey, give up the lies that bind. Be free from what leads you astray. In consciousness of that, there is no other. In realization, everything is that. What's incanted, that's what's incanted, that's what's murmured and spoken in the treatises of the Purana. There's no seeing that does not perceive it, but it's witnessed solely at the precious Guru's feet. If the Guru's words but enter your heart, it's as if you've been handed an assurance. Saraha says, the world is deceived by lies. The childish can't perceive their innermost nature. Without meditation, beyond all renouncing, living at home with your spouse, if enjoying things intently doesn't free you, Saraha says, how can consciousness be free? If it's evident, what's meditation do? If it's hidden, don't measure darkness. Saraha constantly cries out loud, your innate nature neither exists nor doesn't exist. Take up what dies, is born and is bound. Take that and perfect the utmost great bliss. Saraha utters dense and deep words. The bestial don't comprehend, they're bereft. You're deceived by meditation, so why meditate? Of what cannot be spoken, why speak? The whole world's deceived by the seal of existence, and no one can perfect their inmost nature. This one is perfect, I think. So you're deceived by meditation, so why meditate? So when our meditation is all messed up, but because of our ideas, why meditate? Of what cannot be spoken, why speak? Why speak about Mahamudra? And when we have these moments of clarity, why mess it up with words? I feel like Saraha these days would say, of what cannot be spoken, why post everything on Facebook? Like our meditation experiences. The whole world's deceived by the seal of existence. The mind itself defies our ability to understand it at times. At least conceptually. And no one can perfect their innermost nature because it's already perfected. No tantra, no mantra, no reflection or recollection. Hey, fool, all of this is the cause of error. Mind is unstained. Don't taint it with meditation. You're living in bliss. Don't torment yourself. Mind is unstained. Don't taint it with meditation. So what does that mean for you? Mind is unstained. Don't taint it with meditation. You're living in bliss. Don't torment yourself. This kind of goes directly back to, to Lopa's 6 nails. Like, basically don't freak out and start having to make ideas about these things. Like with analyzing. Don't worry. Saraha goes on, eating and drinking, enjoying bliss, ever filling the chakras again and again. By such practices, you perfect the mundane. The master's foot crushes mundane existence. Where thought and breath no longer roam, and the sun and moon don't shine, there, fool, repose your mind. This is a teaching that Saraha declares. This is actually a rather esoteric point. Hey, unify, don't divide. Don't make distinctions in knowing. In this whole triple world, there's one color, one great delight. This is a very important point. Don't unify. Unify. Don't divide. Unify. Don't divide. Don't make distinctions in knowing. In this whole triple world, past, present, future, there's only one color, one taste, one great delight. Everything is the same. Everything is the same nature. Everything that arises, and we experience it with awareness. It comes together in that way. Good things, bad things, whatever it is, pleasant, unpleasant, all arises in that way. A plate of amazing food or a plate of feces is appearance naturally arising within the context of mind. And as it comes together, that's all there is. That's all everything is. No beginning, no end, no middle, not existence, and not nirvana. While that utmost great bliss is not another and not a self. Front, back, and in all 10 directions, whatever you see is the real. To be free from error today, ask nothing else now but that. Where senses subside and self-nature cannot stand, the you hic is the finest to need. Ask for it clearly. Get it from the guru. Where thought is dead and breath is destroyed, on that ground repose your limbs. Fool, know the in-between completely. Know it and you cancel the sea of confusion. Its utmost great bliss. Without it, Saraha declares, you get nowhere. Hey, don't make problems for self-awareness. Existence, nothingness, fortune, hey, fool, they're bondage. Think the inmost thought completely, Yogin. It's just like mixing water in with water. Don't make problems for self-awareness. No. Existence, nothingness, fortune. These words, these terms, these concepts are all bondage. Once we begin to, we're sitting in meditation and then we're like, I'm experiencing this and that, it will never end. This kind of conceptual need to describe, delineate, all of these things is problematic. Meditation. Why look for freedom in a lie? The net of illusion. Why hold it so tight? Trust in the truth of the precious Guru's word. Saraha says, I've made my declaration. From the start, the sky is pure. Looking and looking, you only block the view. Stopping up the sky like that, flawed in his inmost thought, the fool is uncomprehending. So with respect to meditation and mind, nature of mind, from the start, the sky is pure. Nature of mind is inherently pure. But by looking and looking, just exerting effort, I'm meditating, we stop up the sky. We fall out of relationship with it. So, flawed by pride, if you don't perceive the real, you ruin every way that you've been given. The whole cosmos is diluted by meditation. No one perceives their innermost nature. So when we're prideful in the sense of, here, I know a bit of Buddhist philosophy, I'm going to use this to help explain my meditation practice, we begin to delude, the entire experience. I'm going to pause right here because Anjana asks a question. Is some of the secrecy discourse in Tantra is connected with the inarticulability or the distortion that can occur through translation into language? Also interested in this because I'm finding speech and articulation very challenging in general right now. Yeah, I think it's two things. A lot of this stuff is deemed secret because I think as humans, we tend to want to see patterns, right? And so if somebody says, the mind is vast and luminous and spacious, and you're like, three things. And then, you take these three things inadvertently, almost, subconsciously, and just begin to project them on everything. Right? But the act of projecting is not letting things just happen or letting experience arise in an unimpeded way. So the secrecy has less to do with this as a thing that only we can know about and no one else must know about. But it's kind of like keeping a secret from ourselves because we know we're going to fuck it up. We know too much. I've used this metaphor before and I really think it's a good one, but in those initial stages of being in a relationship with someone where we make such a big deal out of the relationship that we place way too much effort on being in the relationship, or anything new, we'll end up imposing a tremendous amount of effort and identity and structure onto something which is just in front of us that we're part of. And then, of course, as we see from these songs, and if one reads this book, Roger Jackson does the introduction is really nice, and he talks about how there's this negative reasoning that needs to happen where it's like, it's not this, it's not this, it's not that, and it's definitely not this, because you can't point to it directly. This is the other thing about the human mind with respect to how it conceptualizes things. The more that we end up trying to say it's like this, it's like that, it's like that, that is kind of almost like the worst thing you can do, because everybody's like, oh, it's that, they said it's like that, it's that, and they stop there and they don't go into it with practice. The process of going into it is the thing that allows us to actually understand, this is what this is about, definitively, as opposed to just basically reading Cliff Notes on Mahamudra and being like, I know it, man. It's this book is only 12 pages, and now I know Mahamudra inside and out. the only way you know Mahamudra is when you let go of the conceptual mind, you let go of the searching, you let go of this need to define, you let go of fanciness, you let go of how it might look and sound on Facebook and Instagram, and you just practice, you know. You can't practice Mahamudra and virtue signal at the same time. Especially virtue signaling around Mahamudra. Not perceiving the root of mind, triply you falsify the innate. There you live and there you die. You make your dwelling there, child. If you consider the rootlessness of the real, well, it's revealed through the Guru's teachings. Saraha says, fool, know this well. Samsaric distinctions are forms of mind. Another can't tell you your inmost nature. Apart from the Guru's teaching, it's never seen. In it, not a single flaw exists. It's purified. Right and wrong are both consumed. When you've thoroughly cleansed your innermost thought, then the Guru's virtues enter into your heart. Thinking such thoughts, Sraha sings, tantras, mantras, not a single one do I see. So like all this stuff. And the problem, I think, this is kind of fun. So how does this relate to whiteness? Like whiteness is the manifestation of all of this neurosis into one messed up, painful spot. So like the knowing everything getting a graduate degree in Buddhist studies is like the worst thing you could do for meditation practice. Because then you know it all, you have everything is like in these nice, neat little boxes. Mahamudra is this, or the way people talk about, all the yanas. There's, even though it's not politically correct, the Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana, and then they say, Sahajana yana. And then Shambhala people say like, Shambhalayana. Those distinctions are all fine, right? But there really ought to be kind of tiptoed around. The more we make them real, the more we really mess up. Even our ability to relate to any of them in an authentic way. So Kyle writes, thank you for this talk. Would you talk a bit about states of mind where one is experiencing a senses of dullness? To be a little clearer, at times in practice or before sleep, I will experience states where there's not much mental activity, and yet there is a lack of clarity and awareness. If I nudge my mind gently, I can open and relax into that spaciousness. Do you have any other suggestions? So one of these... So, I mean, the most obvious one is exhaustion, right? Like when we're tired, it can be hard to rest in awareness, right? So especially if we're doing something at night and our body relaxes, it's just pretty natural that we may slip off into kind of a dull space pre-sleep. Relax into spaciousness. Like, what does that even mean? Yeah, I mean, I say that kindly. Like we're all here as, this is Vajrayana Art School, and the painting right in front of us that we're critiquing is relax into spaciousness. So, what does relaxing into spaciousness mean? Right, so the implication is that there's no spaciousness at any other times. Like I need to relax into it. I think one of the things that's helpful as we get into our practice more is to begin to, redefine the terms, and some of that is letting go of conceptual habits. Spaciousness is constant, right? We're not always able to recognize it, you know, and so then it becomes these little practices of what it means to nudge mind gently. So what works for me is to just, this is not a very popular term in America, but to submit, to submit myself. So laying down, submitting myself to the experiences of what are happening right now and just letting everything go. Rod likes to, use the term laying it at the feet of the mother. That's also kind of a good parallel term. But to submit, to just let it all happen. The problem with approaching meditation sometimes is that we activate the mind by looking too hard. And Saraha even says this. He says, I'm like a Bible thumper. I don't even remember what page it's on. And it's probably not important. No, but we shouldn't work too hard. We should be a little lazy in the sense of, or we should be a little overconfident. That we don't need to constantly put effort and effort and effort. Looking too hard. Yeah. Like hurry up and slow down. It's the paradox in the practice to settle into a loose space. So, when we find ourselves getting kind of tight, there are all sorts of things we can do as antidotes. One of them is get up, change position. We don't need to worry about everything happening only within the context of formal practice. We have to begin to develop confidence in learning how to find some of these techniques to shift back into spaciousness or awareness or whatever, words we're going to call it. The same way a painter recognizes when something's getting all messed up. Like, I use that. The arts are helpful for me because my father's an artist. And as a child, I used to watch my dad paint. And I was so fascinated by the process of watching him painting. And, then afterwards, like sitting and staring at it for a very long time and looking at where this whole thing needs to be tweaked. And he even engaged in these like strange practices to kind of psych himself out in the process of painting. So that he wouldn't, those conceptual like projections that we kind of just put everywhere, these like stamps, this is the way it is. He tried to psych all that stuff out to be able to just authentically paint. And so that's what I would suggest, is to kind of throw everything away, burn everything and just be with what's happening in that moment. And when spaciousness is not arising, we're not miners who are trying to mine for spaciousness. Well, shit, where is it, man? Like, I see a rich vein of spaciousness over there. What we're trying to do is to rest into the experience of spaciousness. And what we need to learn how to do is, and really learn through meditation practices, when we're poking, what does that create? When we're exerting effort, what does that lead to? When we relax into the moment, what does that lead to? So all of these words, and this is really what Sarah is pointing out, is like a lot of that stuff is bullshit. Like we need to be able to, at least in a universal way, we need to be able to understand how this arises for us. So I don't know if that's helpful. I'm sure it probably wasn't. But I'm sorry if that is the case. So he writes, you're bound by deeds. So when you're free from deeds, your mind is free. So this comes back to that your question. You're bound by deeds. So when you're free from deeds, right? When you're free from activity, your mind is free. When your mind is free, you reach the undeficient, utmost nirvana. Oh yeah, right. Sam made a point. Thank you, Jamandra, for pointing that out. I feel like this relates back to the conversation we had about fear a while back too. Naming is a kind of reassurance and preparation for experiences we don't yet fully understand. And Jamandra writes, the power to name begins or arises only in reality when people regulate this over and around others' essential sovereignty and co-arising self-witness. Yeah, I mean, we name things for so many different reasons, right? Sometimes we name for fear because it is really scary to be in a place where things don't have any particular meaning. And yet, things don't have any particular meaning. And that's the egoistic part of us is searching for that meaning. It can't deal with just sitting down and letting things happen. And yet, from the moment we are born until the moment we're born, that's all that happens, is things happen. And we create elaborate systems of belief, and yet we need to be careful in this space too, not to become nihilistic. However, the fine line becomes creating systems, resting in systems, making these systems very rigid, and then being a prisoner to that. There's so many ways in which we become prisoners to Dharma when we take it, we take it to as being real. And thank you, Nicole, for this point. It's form is emptiness is form is emptiness. That's what's very destabilizing about Mahamudra, especially initially, and especially if we think we're really smart, because we have all these ideas about the whole path, and then we sit down and we can't even rest in awareness without philosophizing a basic shamatha session. We need to project all this stuff. And then, so Mahamudra allows us two things. I mean, it allows us, it's this very powerful accountability partner where you're like, holy fuck, man, I don't know shit. All I do is construct my own suffering. And then the other piece is, oh my God, recognition of this is the thing that will liberate me from all of my suffering. And so Saraha says, the single seed of everything is mind, where existence and nirvana both arise. Bow down to it. Like a magical jewel, it grants you the things you wish. The seed of everything is mind, where existence and nirvana both arise. Bow down to it like a magic jewel. It grants all the things you wish. We can't be capitalist like, Mahamudra practitioners. This is not something that we enter into a meditation session with the expectation of I'm applying 30 minutes of time and effort and energy, and so therefore I expect, the commensurate response and product. There will be times when we exert very little, effort, and everything blows up in a good way, and we're able to have, an experience of clarity, of great profundity. And then there are times where, our whole perspective changes, in a way that is, while seemingly virtuous, is just so conceptually heavy that we're like just shoveling all this like coal into the furnace of Mahamudra, and it just it goes out of control. So this really is like learning how to dance, which I don't know, I don't like dancing for some reason. Or paint or sculpt or write or something, like this is much more about art than it is philosophy. Practice of Mahamudra is about being dynamically, and not being dogmatic at all. And this, I'll tell you what, so I I'm not sure how many people are going to, are familiar with the story of Milarepa's life, but he ends up towards the end of his life really kind of attracting the ire of a geshe, so somebody who's a scholar, basically kind of like somebody who has a a doctorate in Buddhist philosophy and has studied the Buddhist teachings and various different traditions and has everything memorized and all of that, right? So Milarepa is relatively uneducated, from what we know, and spent a lot of time doing practice, especially Mahamudra. And this geshe becomes very jealous of him because not only can Milarepa teach Dharma very well, he teaches it very fluidly and in the vernacular, right? So it doesn't have the kind of highfalutin philosophical kind of tone that he's used to, and that he venerates because he's a product of academia, so to speak. But so the geshe basically starts spreading rumors about him and calls him shit and challenges him to battles, teaching battles. It's kind of like the early days of hip hop where everybody would go to parks and they'd have DJs with turntables, except in this particular case it was Dharma, and so they would fight each other, in Dharma teaching. And Milarepa was very kind of, unassuming in the way he taught, which frustrated this guy even more because he's like, this guy's so fucking humble. All this, he's got to be full of shit. And so he ends up poisoning him. And that's what leads to Milarepa's death. And there's this one day I was sitting, I don't know, doing something trivial. And all of a sudden it occurred to me, like the profound metaphor of this geshe poisoning and killing Milarepa. And from the standpoint of intellect, poisoning and killing naturally arising meditative experience, which is intuitive in nature, right? Which is conveyed through the vernacular. I mean, Milarepa was famous for his gur, his songs, right? He sang. He spent time with animals. He was kind of like a Saint Francis of Assisi kind of person. So I think this metaphor of a geshe representing the intellect and the academy, etc., poisoning and leading to the demise of Milarepa is something that happens every day, like, in our meditation experience, and the way we walk around the world, right? Walk around passing through phenomena all the time, which is constantly arising, in a co-emergent way with our experience of mind. And we need to ask ourselves and begin to explore, are we going to poison this moment, or are we going to let it happen? And we poison it by virtue signaling our Dharma practice everywhere, and it's a little late to bring this up, but I had mentioned, and this is in the book too, in Modern Tantric Buddhism, these 3 ways of dealing with obstacles in the path: avoiding the obstacles, transforming the obstacles, and resting in the obstacles. The process of resting in whatever obstacle that arises aligns with Mahamudra practice. The process of transforming the obstacles aligns itself with tantric practice, and the process of avoiding the obstacles aligns itself with the Theravadan tradition. And sometimes the problem with Tantra is that we spend way too much time and energy transforming everything. We don't let it happen. Somebody we have a hard time with is saying things that like really bug us. Well, the tantric thing to do is say, see this person as Chenrezi, Avalokiteshvara, and all of their, abusive language is mantra. So you're listening, and all you're trying to hear is Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, and it's like, what's really being said is, you're full of shit, I hate you, blah, 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 you're a shitty meditator, all of this stuff. You're pretentious, blah, 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 blah. And in the practice of Mahamudra, to fall too much into this transformation place is not a really healthy thing, which is why you get these statements, where, especially the whole beginning of this, where Saraha is poking fun at everybody. He pokes fun at the Siddhas, he pokes fun at the Hindu practitioners, as the Jain practitioners, and also the Buddhist practitioners, because that's not what Mahamudra is really about. Mind bound. So when the mind is bound, you're bound. When it's freed, you're free. What binds the stupid quickly and fully frees the wise. Grasp the mind as being like space. As naturally spacious, grasp the mind to be. When thought has turned into non-thought, you'll gain thereby unsurpassed awakening. When it's made like space, the winds are bound. So the winds and the energy, winds in the body, the energy channels. When sameness is thoroughly known, all of the winds in the body that cause agitation, movement of energy, dissolve. We experience tremendous stability. Saraha says, if you're able, you'll quickly transcend what transits and shifts. This part refers to Tumo. When wind and fire and the mighty power have stopped, at the time when nectar flows and the winds enter the mind, when through the 4 absorptions they enter a single abode, then utmost great bliss cannot be contained by space. In house after house, the talk is of that. How great bliss abides and goes unrecognized. Saraha says, the whole world is deceived by mind, but non-intellect Nobody gets it. We don't understand non-intellect. In each and every living being as well, the real exists unrealized. Everything by nature tastes the same. Gnosis is unsurpassed by intellect. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow too. People insist on the ultimate good. Hey, it's like a hand cupped full of water. Open up and you lose it and never know. And then maybe we'll stop at this next one. To do a deed or not to do a deed. When comprehension is sure, there is no bondage or freedom. It's beyond syllables, but claiming to explain it, which of 100 yogins will point this out? So anyway, I really enjoy Saraha. He kind of tells it like it is. Here's another really good one. Hey child, study the alchemist's way and you stay in ignorance. Reading their books, you don't know the world is already pure. What he keeps pointing out to us is practice, practice, practice. Don't feel into this intuitively, and don't, we shouldn't presume effort. And we shouldn't presume that we need to put a phenomenal amount of energy into this. And we shouldn't presume that whatever it is that we know or we've experienced up to this point has anything to do with Mahamudra. Not that it doesn't, but when we assume that it does, we start, contaminating the petri dish of our practice. So anyway, we're basically at our time. Hopefully this was not just a waste of time. I want to thank everybody for coming, and I want to dedicate the merit from whatever might arise from this to the liberation of all beings. I pray that everyone who's here today, and then everybody who's ever connected to Mahamudra for the people, are able to go deep into their practice and and experience bliss in every moment. A total waste of time. Alchemist, hey, I mean, I got an alchemy tattoo. I love alchemy, so I don't hate on alchemy. All right, well, thank you all. It's a real joy to be with you on Fridays. I really enjoy it. So I wish you all a lovely weekend. Take good care of yourselves. Bye-bye.